Gittin Daf Gimel discusses the takana made by the Bezin of Rabbi Gamliel Hazaken that people should not cancel a get without properly informing the shliach and the woman that the get has been canceled. The Gemara will discuss how things used to work before the takana, how was the get cancelable. And then the Gemara will discuss the takana, how it's set up, how it works, and then the Gemara will discuss what happens if someone violates the takana, and whether or not it works, and what is considered to be a violation of the takana. Let's begin. The Gemara's first sugya is what happened before the takana. In the old days, people used to be able to cancel the get in front of a Bezdin without speaking to the shliach, without speaking to the woman. Just he could appear in front of a court and he could cancel it. So the Gemara's first discussion is how many people consist of this court. The Gemara says Machlokes Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. Rav Nachman says it's only 2 people is enough. Rav Sheshes says you have to have 3. So Rav Sheshes says 3, understandable. A court is usually 3 people. Nachman says 2. He says you do find that a court of 2 people can be called a Bezdin. He says if you look at a shtar pruzbol where you give over your loan that's collectible to a court to collect on your behalf so that Shemitah doesn't cancel it, it says in a Mishnah that he writes, I give over to Pliny Upliny Hadayanin, such and such the judges. That implies that there are only 2 people. So you see 2 people counts as a court. So Rosh Hashem's response to that, he says, no, there's really 3 people there, but the Tana doesn't have to mention every single thing. He just gives you the beginning. Rav Nachman gives a second source that you could have 2 people be a court, also from Prozbul. So he brings a Mishnah that says that either the judges or the witnesses sign at the bottom. So what is the significance of saying the judges and the witnesses? Why do you have to say both of them? If for sure the judges could sign or the witnesses could sign. What should be the chiddush of that? The chiddush must be that it's the same. Judges like witnesses. Just like witnesses are only 2 people, judges could also be only 2 people. That Rav Sheshes rejects as well. And he says, no, judges have to be 3 people. Witnesses are 2 people. The reason that this Mishnah mentions it is to teach me a halacha that it's kosher even if they don't sign in the manner in which it's written. Meaning the text of the shtar usually reveals if you're talking about witnesses or judges. If it was witnesses, it would say we are testifying to, and if it was judges, you would say we sat together as a court. But if you sign it, when you sign it, you usually sign it as such and such witness, or you sign it as such and such the judge. So even if you wrote it in the text of witnesses and you end up as a judge or vice versa, it's still good. And that's what the chiddush is. Either the judges or the witnesses can sign at the bottom. Next, the Gemara discusses what is the reason for the takana. We had said that it was a tikkun olam, was fixing the world, was fixing a problem. What is the problem was being fixed? This is Machlokes Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rav Yochanan says is to prevent mamzerim. Reish Lakish says it was to prevent the woman from being stuck as an aguna, making it difficult for her to get divorced. Now, the machlokes centers around whether mamzerim could be a problem or not, and it's linked to our previous machlokes between Rav Sheshes and Rav Nachman. That is, are we talking about a Bezdin of 2 or a Bezdin of 3? So the Gemara explains that Rav Yochanan understood that we're talking about a Bezdin of 2, and therefore it is highly possible that only 2 people are aware that it was canceled. 2 people are not enough for the word to spread. And therefore the woman won't find out about it. She'll go and she'll get remarried, assuming that she's divorced, not knowing that the get was canceled. And she'll make mamzera. And that was the problem that the Beis Din only wanted to avoid, and therefore they canceled this entire thing. Now, Reish Lakish says that can't be, because Reish Lakish holds like Rav Sheshes that he had to have a Beis Din of 3. A Beis Din of 3, word gets out, and therefore she's going to know, and mamzera won't be an issue. Therefore he has to come up with a different explanation as to what the problem was. He says the problem was aguna. That it's too easy for him to cancel it because he could just run to the Beis Din and say, I'm canceling it. To prevent him from being able to do that, to make it harder to cancel, they were mataking that he has to go and actually send the message to the shliach or to the woman before the get reaches her hand. And now the Gemara discusses 2 machlokes between Rebbe and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, which will take us throughout the rest of the daf. The first machlokes, relatively short, is what happens before the time of the takana, what happens after the time of the takana, if somebody went ahead and ignored it. That is, somebody was mevatel in front of a Beis Din even after Rabbi Gamliel Hazaken was ready with talking. You're not allowed to do that. So, does it work? Midaraisa, it does. Because deraisa, canceling in front of a Beis Din is enough. It was a takanas chazal that said that it needs to be told to the shliach or to the woman. So what do you say here? So Gemara says, Rebbe says, it's mevotel, it is canceled. Midaraisa, it's canceled, and therefore she's not divorced. Shimon ben Gamliel says, no, it's not canceled. And if he does in front of a bezin, it's not canceled. He cannot cancel it, and he cannot change the conditions. He can't do anything. Because otherwise, what does the takana of the bezin help? You could just ignore it. So the Gemara says, because you want to prevent the takana of the bezin from being ignored, you have a right to say that a get is valid when midaraisa it's not. Midaraisa it's canceled get. She's not divorced. How could you go ahead and say that she is divorced? Tenacious ish, you're freeing la'alma. So the Gemara says, yes, you can. Since a person is mekadosh woman adaita d'Rabbanan with the approval of the Rabbanan, he always says, "Harad mekadosh li b'tebazu kidas Moshe v'Yisrael." So therefore, they could say that we are uprooting our agreement, and the marriage is canceled from the beginning, and they were never married. And therefore, she was never married to him, and she's free to marry somebody else. The Gemara says that's good if he was mekadosh her with money, because then they could take away his ownership of the money that he used to give her kiddushin. But if it was mekadosh with bia, how does that help? And so Gemara said yes, we can still do that. You could still say adaita d'Rabbanan, and therefore the Rabbanan don't agree. And with bia that he did to create the kiddushin is considered retroactively to be a bias znos. Gemara now brings the second machlokes between Rebbe and Shimon ben Gamliel. This one has two parts and two explanations of the first part. So the cases where somebody says to 10 people, write a get for my wife. So in the first case, he didn't say all of you write a get. He didn't say kulchem. He just said to all 10, and he did not use the word kulchem. He just said write a get for my wife. In that situation, not all 10 have to sign. Not all 10 have to be involved. He just told the 10 of them. And the question is, if he cancels it to just 2 or 3 of them, you would need 3, 1 to write and 2 to sign. If he cancels it just to some of them and not to the rest of them, is that good or not? Now, the Gemara has two explanations. Says, what do you mean, is that good or not? What's the question? The Gemara's first understanding is that the machlokes is this a violation of the takana that you have to cancel it in a way that everybody knows that it's canceled? So, according to this version, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says you can't do that. You can't cancel it like that. He's saying that it would be a violation of the takana if you did that, because he holds Eidus Shabbatla Miksasa Batla Kula. By canceling 3 of them or some of them, you canceled all of them. Therefore, the shlichas, the right to create the get, has been canceled. The get is no good. They're not aware that it's no good, they think that it is good, and they'll go and divorce her, meaning those that you didn't cancel in front of them, you just canceled some and not the others. They'll go and they'll fulfill the instruction originally, divorce her with a get, which is invalid, and therefore this is a violation of Rabban Gamliel HaZaken's takana. That's Rav Shimon ben Gamliel's opinion according to this explanation. Rebbe holds, according to this, no, it's a fine. He could cancel just a few of them. It's not a problem. The reason is because by canceling some of them, he did not cancel the rest of them. The other ones are still good. A partial cancellation doesn't cancel the entire thing, and therefore they are still legally empowered to go and give the get. And if they will go and give the get, it's not a problem. That's the Gemara's first explanation. The Gemara's second explanation is to say that Rebbe and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel agree that by canceling some of them, you haven't canceled all of them. And all Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel means to say is, since it was made in front of 10, it does not work to cancel the entire thing by just canceling some. If you made it in front of all 10, you appointed them all 10 shlichim at once. If you want to cancel it, you have to cancel it in front of all 10, or it's not effective. And that's all it means to say. It has nothing to do with being a problem of the takana. It's not an effective cancellation. They can still go and continue unless he cancels in front of all of them. Now the Gemara introduces a shaila which is dependent on which of these two understandings of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is correct. What would be is if when he first said to them to write again, instead of saying to the 10, write a get for my wife, he said all of you write a get for my wife. That means he said kulchem. In that situation, all 10 have to sign, and if any one of them is missing, it won't go forward. So now, it depends on what are the two explanations. According to the first explanation that we said, that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel was afraid that the get is going to go forward with it having been canceled because he holds the Eidish Shabbat Miksasa Batla Kula. In this situation, there's no concern. It can't go forward as long as he said that it's canceled and at least one of them heard about it. It can't go forward because that guy won't sign and the get won't be able to be delivered. And therefore, there's no concern of it having been delivered in its canceled state. Now, therefore, there will be no problem. According to the second version, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel was just saying if you do something in front of 10, you have to cancel in front of all 10, otherwise it's not a valid cancellation. But he does not hold the Veda Shabbat L'Musas Shabbat L'Kuva. So here also you would have to do it in front of all 10. And if you didn't do it in front of all 10, it's not canceled, not for anybody. And even the ones who saw you cancel it, the ones that you cancel in front of them, that cancellation is meaningless. If you made the appointment in front of all 10, you require all 10 to be there for the cancellation to be effective to anybody. So on this, the Gemara says they have a clear proof to figure out which one he means. That's because we have another machlokes where it says he said only to two people, like the standard situation. He said to two people, write a get for my wife. And here you also have a machlokes, can he cancel by talking to just one of them? Rebbe says yes. Shimon Gamliel said no, he has to cancel in front of both of them. Now, two people is kulchem automatically, because you always need at least two people to sign. So it's just like the kulchem case. And still, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says you can't cancel in front of only one of them. If you cancel in front of only one of them, it's not effective. Now, obviously, he's saying that the cancellation is no good, and therefore he would be saying our second shot, that it's not effective to cancel. In the case of kulchem, we would also say it's not effective, and even the ones who heard the cancellation can go and continue to sign. He is not saying that this is a violation of Rabban Gamliel Hazaken's takana, because if he would be saying that, then in our case, he wouldn't have a problem. In the case of just the two people, what would be the issue? No one's